Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Brony Debates Live. I hope you're all doing well tonight. Let's get a good start to this stream. I almost said weekend like I usually do, force of habit, but I realize it is Thursday still. We're doing it at a little bit of a special time because somebody had to go get a job like some lame productive member of society. How dare you? Anyway, I hope you're all, like I said, I hope you're all doing well tonight. Tonight, we've got a very interesting topic. We're going to talk about why writers are the worst. Just the absolute pinnacle of narcissism in our society. And joining me today for that, I've got some writers here and some people that are really good at analyzing writing, starting on the left side of the thumbnail with Pony Cordero. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, what's going on, buddy?
It's going pretty good. I expect this to be a really good debate. And joining us tonight, once again, special guest, Mr. Lee Tockar. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for asking. I'm doing really well.
Awesome.
This ought to be fun.
Yep, it's great to have you. We got Cruizer Brony who helped us set this all up. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing all right. As someone who is currently writing his own story, I knew this was going to be something to learn because there's a lot of pitfalls in writing I want to avoid.
Indeed, and we've got Silver Quill joining us tonight. How are you doing tonight, Silver?
I'm doing quite well, but when you speak of pitfalls, you think of me.
Yeah.
Well, I thought of the ET game, but that's just me.
Oh god, you're probably the only person who thinks of the ET game.
Dude, I met ET just the other weekend.
Okay, did you get probed?
No, but I got fingered. We touched.
Oh,
Alrighty then.
like a special moment.
I guess I won't ask for you to show on the doll.
So is ET like another euphemism for proctologist or what?
Well, I didn't know that.
It's your thing, man. It's your thing.
I didn't know there was an actor in that thing. I thought it was a giant animatronic.
Man, we are going off the rails already. All right, so before we get much further into it, let me thank the patrons. Very grateful to everybody who supports the channel, especially those on the $10 and up tier. These guys are Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministry, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, who's with us tonight, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Mr. Sonic 31, Ridge the Hedgehog, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. Please check out all their links in the description, and we would definitely appreciate if you considered joining the Patreon, where you can get into the Discord server and hang out with us and be on the show and make suggestions for the topics and games we play. It's a lot of fun. We're back into what do I call it? Fundraising mode, because I have decided that I would like to do content creation full time, but I need to about triple what I'm taking in on Patreon in order to make that happen. So if you or any bronies you know would like this show, send them my way. Anyway, let's get to it. So, Mr. Lee, you've got some projects coming down the line that you wanted to talk about tonight. Why don't you tell us what you're working on?
Well, it's coming down the line. It's 13 years I've been writing this novel, and I wrote a movie for it, and it was optioned by Industry Works, who did the Von Helsing series. And then I made changes to the actual novel, and so it changed the dynamic of the movie. So, but I did manage to get to a table read where I had all of the A-level actors in town who were kind enough to get swept away with my energy, and so we got at Dick and Rogers. We had a whole, if you go to the YouTube channel, you can see the Grim Vlogs, GRYM. So it's called The Grim Possession of Chesterfield Couch. And I, this year, have to start talking about it because I want to actually sell it. And I've been terrible in my career at pitching myself or talking about myself. So I have to get over that, apparently.
Alrighty then. So yeah, there are links in the description as well to some of the stuff that you can check out if you're at all interested. So tell us a little bit about the project itself.
Well, the elevator pitch is kind of like, imagine, if you will, Harry Potter meets The Odd Couple. So it's a very, very dark comedy about accidental possession two very unlucky souls trapped in one unlucky boy's body, who is cursed with bad luck. And so it's a story of unrequited love and vengeance and silliness and magic and ridiculousness and a whole bunch of really weird made up words that I just completely bastardized the language with, because why not?
Alrighty then. And similarly, Cordero mentions his FiMfictions sometimes when he comes on the show. What are you working on these days, Cordero?
Yes, I also had A-list celebrities table reading my yeah, I've posted a couple MLP fan fictions recently. I've actually been on a writing tear, getting a lot of stuff out. The last time I was on, I had just released Loveless Love Child, which was a short story in 2 parts about like a runaway changeling bastard child of Queen Chrysalis. And tonight I just released the first chapter of another story that I call Crescent Moon, which takes place right as Luna's rebellion is failing, and follows her general. Basically, her general gets thrown into prison, but Celestia decides she needs a personal assassin. And then Celestia also appoints a personal student and decides that her student needs a bodyguard, and assigns her personal assassin as the bodyguard, which was Luna's main general when she rebelled. And he's forced to do so because he's bound by a magic halo tattoo, which is a slave tattoo across his forehead. This work is heavily inspired by Sarah J. Maas's Crescent City novel series that has 2 books out so far. I read the first book and I loved it immensely, and I loved one of the main characters, so I just stole him and put him in a fan fiction, which I can do that because it's just fan fiction and I'm not selling it. Yeah, if I was like making an original story, I would probably make it a bit more different, because I literally just lifted one of her characters and said he would work perfectly as this character.
Well, according to the Hero with 1,000 Faces, it's impossible to really make an original character.
True.
So, here's the thing about tonight's topic, right? And I feel like this is a very important question, is why are writers narcissists? Because, I mean, obviously writers are narcissists because you spend all this time writing out these stories, and then, you know, most of us, with very few exceptions, just throw them out into the world and expect people to care. And beyond that, as I can attest from personal experience, from, you know, when I tried to write books, like even when I tried to write characters that were just completely opposite to me, they still just ended up being me. It just, but like with maybe with one aspect of my personality just splintered off. And another, you know, something I've noticed about writers is that, like, if you're friends with a writer, it's not a matter of if you'll be put in his book. It's just a matter of which character you're going to be in his book. So
pretty much,
obviously, writers seem to think that people should care. So why is it that you guys write? So, Lee, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I love, first of all, I love the topic. I really enjoyed the last one that we did, talking about art and the declination of modern art. And I like this topic because writing, like all other forms of expression, is the creator and is the destroyer of our culture. And it is a representation, and we are a microcosm of, like, I'm an amalgam of everything that's come before me, everything I've ever seen, everything I've ever heard, read, saw, partook in. And so, of course, narcissism is kind of built into that, because you have only your own perspective to look at the universe from. So I don't know. Other than that, I think it's a pretty individual endeavor. And because it is such a lonely endeavor, unless you're working on a staff and you're staff writing for like a comedy troupe or for, you know, whomever, it's really hard to not put yourself into everything that you're doing.
So here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to direct that same question to Cordero to get his take on it from the more, amateur writing side of things. And then I want to hear Silver Quill's analysis of your personalities and your answers from the perspective of a connoisseur, because I think I can assume, I can safely assume that Silver Quill is probably one of the most well-read people on this panel. So Cordero, why do you write?
Well, as far as why do I write, it's because the stories are fun. The story, like the process of writing and coming up with the stories itself, is fun. To your other question about narcissist, is you basically have to be a narcissist to be a writer. It's the only way to get over the crippling anxiety and imposter syndrome. Because I don't know how professional writers feel, but as an amateur writer, specifically a fan fiction writer, I constantly feel inadequate. Like, there's a reason I'm not published. There's a reason I haven't attempted to be published, and I only write fan fiction. And you're constantly flooded with those self-doubts. And there's also, for me personally, there's a safety and security in writing fan fiction, because if you're writing fan fiction and you're good, great, you're good. But if you're not that good, well, it's just fan fiction. It's not a big deal. So you can sort of hide in that veneer of being a fan fiction writer. But once you go out and you try to self-publish, there's plenty of self-publishing options and websites, basically fan fiction websites, except it's original stories. It's pretty similar format. But there's other bigger self-publishing options, or you can submit to an editor, submit to a publisher, and possibly get it sent back with no notes. I couldn't get past the first chapter, and I didn't even read this. No, thank you. And that hurts. I've never even done it before, but just the idea of being harshly rejected by someone who knows what they're talking about is terrifying. Because when somebody downvotes your fan fiction story and comments poorly, it's like, well, what do you know? You're just some guy. But to send something to an editor and have the editor say you suck, like, I already have anxiety about that, and I haven't even done it.
Well, I think, I actually have a question later on down the road for you, Cordero, because
Yeah.
I've never been a writer of, I don't know anything about fanfic. I know what it is. I know how to implement it. I have things that I'm an uber fan of. Like, I love Sherlock Holmes. I love Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I love, there's certain things I love, but I don't know about what the difference is between. I mean, obviously the same process has to take place for you, right? When you're doing fanfic, you're obviously in love with what you're doing. You're looking at the world through that perspective and that lens.
Mm-hmm.
So the only people that should criticize it are people that know. It's like Sir Francis Bacon said, you can only criticize something if you're good at that same thing yourself. So, anybody can be a critic.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a requirement in order to judge this story, you need to know something about the source material, because the thing about writing for fan fiction is there's always a source material.
Yeah,
you're not the source material, as opposed to like a regular writer. You are the source material.
So you'd have to be, I guess, like, you'd have to fact check everything. You'd have to really understand the backstory of every nuance of every character. And in writing fanfic, I'm sure that because everybody is a fan of that fiction, therefore that would elevate you to the status of being known as a fanfic writer. They're going to be on you like,
oh yeah, it's an advantage and disadvantage.
They're going to be like looking for flaws in you.
No,
exactly. It's a double-edged sword, because when you're writing in a fandom, you have the elevation of these people already love these characters. You're writing to an audience that already likes what you're doing, or at least the source material. And so because they already like that, they're willing to indulge what you have. So you get like a preset audience for yourself. But where the sword goes the other way is that if you do anything different that they don't like, that doesn't match their view of the characters, you get crucified for it.
Right.
So it's like you get a built-in, well, I love Twilight Sparkle, so I'm going to read your story about Twilight Sparkle, but you got her personality wrong. This isn't how I imagine her, so screw you, downvote.
Right.
So let's what I would say for fan fiction is that it really depends on the individual reader, because some people like myself, I care a lot about canon, and I do like seeing. I'm a little looser and more forgiving with different interpretations of a character. I like it, but I tried to review fan fictions briefly on my channel, and then I realized I just couldn't be objective. So I just stopped. And,
you don't have to be objective to be a reviewer.
Right. So, well, it was coloring my ability to give good criticism, because I was getting stuck on things related to canon. When fan fiction, you can really do whatever you want, and some people like the twist on the canon, or like it taken to a new universe, or and some people just want another episode of the thing that they like.
Of the show.
Silver.
Well, were you reading canon compliant fics, or were you reading AUs? Like, were you holding AU fics to the standard of the canon? AU being alternate universe. There's basically two primary veins of fan fiction. There's canon compliant, which is what it sounds like. You're basically writing the show or the book. You're just trying to write a story that fits in absolutely perfectly with all of the lore and the existing characters and what actually happened. That's canon compliant. And then AU is alternate universe, where I'm taking this universe and these characters and doing whatever I want with it. The idea is that you're keeping the characters the same. The characters will act like themselves, and the world will feel like that world, but you get to change whatever you want to change, hence alternate universe. So if you're holding AU fics to canon, that might have been part of the problem.
Yeah,
So
well, ultimately, I'll ask you to hang on to that question for just a second, Lee. I want to get Silver Quill's opinion on all of this so far. Yeah, so Silver, as an analyst and connoisseur of books yourself, what do you take of Cordero and Lee's answers?
Well, first I will analyze yourself, Brony Buck. I am not swayed by your misdirection and manipulation. The way you have phrased this live stream, it forces everyone to assume that writers are narcissists, and we're looking into why. We are.
Well, I don't know.
We are.
I don't know about the narcissist, but people freak me out. I go into my novel because that's the only place I feel safe.
And Silver, let us not forget, you're the guy who walks around with the sound machine.
Hey, Silver, have you ever been fishing? Right. Well, so just in case you haven't, in fishing, sometimes you need to use bait, right? So you take the bait and you sort of click it onto the end of the hook, and you throw it out there.
I love the clickbait. I love the wire writers narcissists. I thought that was perfect. I wouldn't change a word.
You guys are giving away my strategy too early here. Silver, let's hear that. Let's hear what you think.
I took it at face value.
but I will not be misled. I will not be manipulated. Now, let's see here. First of all, I noticed that a very big similarity between Lee and Cordero is a sense of comfort. Lee feels that it is the best place where he can express himself in this original fiction. And lo and behold, it's a story that features two perspectives in one body. In other words, trying to understand other people. Not an easy task. I deal with that on a regular basis. Daily, I might add. Now, Cordero is also in a land of comfort. It is where he knows these characters. They're obviously entertaining enough to deserve having fan fiction written about them. And he is more than happy to explore ideas using them, but not quite ready to step out into that world that is original fiction. Even though I can promise you, Cordero, I too have written many a fanfic, but after a while I just realized, you know what, I'm putting so much effort into this, trying to figure out this whole environment, these characters, the government under which they operate. I might as well just make my own, because I'm putting in more work than the show did.
I'm right at that spot myself, because for every show character that I include in my stories lately, I basically have 4 or 5 OCs, original characters, to where like my original characters are outnumbering my show characters, and I'm like, I could just write something with these OCs I'm coming up with at this point.
Exactly,
because they're completely mine. Yeah.
I was going to ask you that, Cordero, because you write fanfic, but you've never really taken a step into the world of original writing, I assume, based on what you've said so far.
Very little.
In this interview.
Very little.
You would have no way of knowing what is more fulfilling to you. But as a writer, I would feel that personally, I would feel very hemmed in by the constraints of the structure that was placed in front of me, and I had to work my characters within the confines of that structure. I'd find that very I'd find that really annoying.
Yeah,
Because
you're
you don't get a chance to like spread your wings and go, and just be yourself.
yeah, you're not wrong. That's a true thing. It helps to really like that structure. If you really like your sandbox, then you feel less restricted in it. And I guess that's why I've written so much MLP stuff, is I really like writing in that universe and that style. Having stories that, even if they're darker tone or whatever, they always circle back to that friendship idea. And I've started getting really good at incorporating those themes of friendship and love and respect, and making it back as part of like the overall message. Like, I wrote a story about Celestia being on trial hundreds and hundreds of years ago, trying to be usurped, and I wrote friendship basically as a substitute for freedom and independence in like American law. And I made like this idea of like unity and friendship was like written into their laws. And so the idea of that Celestia had failed them, and they need to usurp her and move on their own. But then the story comes back around to, obviously she doesn't get kicked out. And they sort of have to reunite and rebuild the country in friendship. Yeah, I explained that really poorly, but the idea is like, I like being in the vein of the message of My Little Pony, and I found that I can write a lot of different stories with that theme.
Can I just add one more question to you?
Yes.
Just because I've never had a conversation with anybody that writes fanfic before. I've talked to people that write them, but I've never actually had an in-depth conversation.
Talked about it.
My question is, do you find that fulfillment? So it seems to me like what you're lacking in not doing original stuff, you are making up for by enjoying. It's almost like that the lessons and the feelings and the sentiment inculcated in this saga of MLP world is almost like a modern passion play. So it's like biblical. It's like there's right and there's wrong, and it's a morality play basically. And so you're expressing yourself through the medium of that emotion. Is that correct, or am I off here?
That sounds accurate.
Okay, I just really need because again, I've never ever talked to anybody that does this.
A question I have for Cruizer is, as an aspiring storyteller, Cruizer, because you're working on a FiMfiction now, what do you think about what everybody has said thus far tonight?
Well, to tell you the truth, not much, because my big question is, how do you make sure that your main protagonist, in this case what I'm doing is a fish out of water story, isn't a blank slate?
How so?
Now, how do you make sure that your main character, the protagonist, in this case, it's a fish out of water story. How do you make sure that he is not a blank canvas? Because the one thing that I keep hearing a lot about in the world of fan fiction is there's a lot of self-inserting. Yeah, people really want to feel like they're going to Equestria, so they'll make a character that doesn't have much of a personality, not much of a backstory, so that's easier for the reader to picture themselves as. And I would like to find a way to stay away from that, but I don't know how you do that.
Okay, I can answer this. All right, so you sit down at a keyboard and you hit a letter.
Wait, hold on. I get
You hit a letter.
Everyone should be writing this down.
Writing this down.
Write this down.
I'm writing this down.
And after
no way, I need it. I really need it in the German accent again. No, otherwise I just. If I'm going to be a Scribner, I told you I have to put it in proper German.
In proper German,
in the vernacular.
Ja,
in the vernacular, please.
Das ist gut.
Das ist good. Yes, Hans. Now you sit at the keyboard. And then you smack the letter. You smack the letter like it's been a bad boy. And then you find another letter and you smack that. And by then you might have a word. Yeah. So you and you keep smacking the keyboard and the letters, and you try to make the words, and then you just gets it done. You put it out there, and then you see what people say. Maybe they say, "Oh, I like this. Oh, guten Tag. It's so good." Or maybe they say. Or maybe
I'd like to personally apologize for derailing this whole conversation before it even began. I really am sorry.
They read your story. They read your story and say "Good day." That's what I said when I finished Crescent City. I just went, "Good day." Oh man, what a tale!
And then they say "Guten Tag." This isn't fun holding my Wiener Schnitzel.
Oh, that was a criticism I got on my FiMfiction recently, because like somebody who is known on FiMfiction for
7 out of 10 too angry,
for reading and reviewing and like making text reviews of people's FiMfictions. He favorited my story out of nowhere, and then a long time later when he had a chance to read it, he said it was a really interesting premise, but he couldn't get past the 4th chapter because the original character had no personality, which was not a criticism that I was expecting. And the only justification I can sort of give for that is he stopped too early, because it was just kind of normal day-to-day life for the guy who didn't, and the character didn't really have any aspirations of his own, and it was extremely right. And at that point, at chapter 4 in the story, he was just getting introduced to the main 6. So bad timing. He stopped too early, but by the same token, I do believe that's a valid criticism. I should have known I should have been able to hook him sooner than 5 chapters.
Yeah, first chapter. Were you going for stoic and reserved, and it just came across as empty?
I have no idea. I was going for like Cruizer was saying, fish out of water, non-confrontational. Like I've said the last time Lee was on, I would get to a point where the character would need to make a decision, say what would I do in this situation, and then wrote the opposite.
Yeah. Well, like maybe you still fell into the everyman trap, which Justin was referring to, and the everyman trap isn't necessarily a bad thing. A lot of writers do it on purpose. Obviously, Justin doesn't want to do that technique. To answer Justin's question, if you want to give your character personality, and for Brawny too, to give your character personality, is don't be afraid to give them opinions and make them unique.
Absolutely.
Like, at the beginning, even at the beginning when you're introducing the character, make them talk about something that really annoys them. And put it in like their daily life as you're like describing their daily life and getting into the meat of the story, getting into that first chapter hook, is talk about something that annoys them, talk about something that they value, talk about what food they like, if they hate broccoli but they like mac and cheese or something, and these seem like minor details, but it gives them that personality. And even if the person reading it loves broccoli and hates mac and cheese, don't be afraid that they won't relate to the character. The fact that you chose to individualize them makes them more relatable, not less.
Can I add to that?
Yes,
please.
Because that is a very valid point, and it is something like I am an avid reader as well. I have been with the limitations of my site, but and I would put my opinion against the world because I know that I'm right about this. You cannot have a story where anybody that is a reader or somebody that's going to experience life through the written word, through your head, nobody's going to associate with that main character if they can't. And so you have to write a definitive character. Doesn't matter what it is, but somebody's got to either relate to it or hate it. You got to love to hate them or hate to love them or whatever it is, but you have to find a relatable character. And that means giving them opinion, giving them backstory, giving them, like, fill them out, make them a solid person. Like the blank slate thing, great, but don't walk out. Personally, I would say don't walk out onto the page with it. You gotta make some decisions about your main character. What they feel, what they think, what thoughts do they think when they're alone? Who are they? Otherwise, we can't relate as readers. And if we can't relate as readers, you've got no story, because who freaking cares?
Exactly. That's the point of the premise for tonight's topic. Really, is who cares. So we've talked about why we write a little bit, but so actually, you know what? I would like to know Cruizer's take on that question. So Cruizer, why you're working on a story there? I don't know if you want to tell us much about it, but at the very least, can you tell us why you want to write it?
Well, To be honest, I want to do something that was a little different because I do want to see if I can make this an original piece. The idea was to actually create a young adult fantasy novel that comes with its own soundtrack because music is my background. Yep. But yeah, while I have been through a lot of hardships in my life, I don't currently live in those times right now. Yeah, going through a lot of ups and downs, but it still could have been a lot worse. And a lot of people, or at least a lot of singers and musicians, tend to write about how they feel in the moments, about their life and their struggles. But seeing as I don't really have, at least, bad struggles, what if I created a world to go with it? What if I created a character who is going through all that struggle and he gets transported to this magical world that's completely inhabited by magical mythical creatures? There's not one human being in sight. He can understand them, but he can't speak their language. However, he is a musician and uses that to communicate. How would that story go down? How would that music sound? How would they be able to communicate with his lack of verbal competence, we'll say? And yeah, this originally started out as a fan fiction, but the more I kept writing, the more I realized, if I just changed some things around, I could make this its own story. And
sounds like a space odyssey. Dun, 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 dun.
So think like MLP meets Harry Potter, basically. And yeah. And I've told this idea to Cordero, who he loved the idea. As a matter of fact, I even influenced an idea that he wants to write about at some point. And just, what can I do with this world and this character? What music can I make for it? And could I possibly take it on tour? That would be the ultimate goal, to actually play that live.
I love the multidisciplinary angle to it and the multi-level marketing scheme thing. I like that a lot.
Oh, geez, let's not call it that. I don't think that's an accurate description.
Oh, no. It's really important to get all it's important. We're living in a time when everybody else is doing this, and you have to think about these things. So if you love doing music, and I know you do, then why not think of it in terms of that as well? Because they have to grow at the same time, as the story and the music have to grow at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. It's sort of like the movie Latrodrome. There, it's the plight of the Romani people and the music that changes from Morocco and then all the Upper Egypt and then all to the Middle East and Southeast Asia and then all through Italy and Sicily and Spain and France, and it's just I love it. But there's so many different things that leaves it open for you. I think that's amazing. I think it's a really good idea. The universal language of music. It's timeless.
So what I've noticed a lot of writers do, especially in the realm of fan fiction and FiMfiction, is that they'll make these self-insert original characters that they just and what they do is they end up trauma dumping everything that ever went wrong in their life. It just gets turned up to 11. Yeah, it gets turned up to 11, and it gets stuck in this character, and then they just try to make you feel sorry for them. Whenever I'm reading something like that, it is not fun to read. I can't connect it because all I can think about is stop feeling sorry for yourself. Get some therapy. All this time you're wasting writing this FiMfiction, you could be using to better yourself instead of trying to justify the mentality you've taken throughout life. So how do you guys reconcile that when you're just making these characters that are self-insert to make everybody feel sorry for you? What do you think, Lee?
I have something. How about creating a character just like you, Brony? You're being the foil, right? You're being the one who's who's asking the questions. So when you portray a character that seems like it's getting a little bit too touchy-feely, or like, oh, I had a horrible childhood, or I love the term trauma dumping, by the way. That's cool. I will be using that.
I unfortunately did not make up that phrase.
It doesn't matter. It's now part of my lexicon. Welcome to the zeitgeist.
You're welcome. I'm honored I could teach you.
But to have another character within the confines of that story that questions that particular mentality. So always have a foil, always have something so that you have an opposite opinion. So you're not caught into one trauma bond with this main character. I would say, personally, have somebody that questions that main character and says, hey, you know what? You're kind of getting whiny. Let's just chill.
Silver, what do you think about the question?
Well, I'm thinking of several things. The first is a time I heard trauma dumping within its own story. It was on NPR, and it was some author I'd never heard of reading about a young boy who wanted to finish the race, but finishing the race became confronting his abusive dad. And in confronting his abusive dad, he was afraid of himself and the world and his thoughts and feelings. And after a while, we turned off the radio because it was just like very heavy. It was basically you wanted the garden hose and you got the fire extinguisher, or the
fire hose, the fire hydrant. Yeah,
the hydrant. There we go. There's
hydrant.
Now with people trauma dumping MLP or you trying to use a pre-existing intellectual property to express their own trauma, it can be done well. It can be reflected. I remember a young woman who suffered sexual abuse from a then boyfriend, now prison inmate. My God. She took the character of Sailor Mercury and went through those stages as an expression, and it worked pretty well. I mean, obviously well outside of what Sailor Moon would tackle, but there you have it.
Okay.
Other people, there is a book I've recently read, What It Is Like to Go to War, by Carl Marlantes. Okay? Carl Marlantes, he describes his experiences in the Vietnam War, but also paints an image of what he wished could have been done to help process everything they were going through. And so sometimes you just got to pick the right vehicle for your pain. Ooh.
Yeah. So that's a valid point.
So perhaps with the folks who are trauma dumping, you're taking My Little Pony and you're trying to add too much in one go. Maybe pick one difficult aspect and pick a character to serve as tackling that. And then you maybe down the line you have another character who tackles another aspect, and that's that. But all at once can be too much for your audience.
I think before anybody endeavors into doing that and being so open and like bearing their wounds to the world of literature through the quill or the mouse, I think they should read Solzhenitsyn's A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, and that it's a short read. It'll take them a day, and they will just stop being all pity me party, because that's the real deal. Like, you being in a gulag, like, deal with that. Now what are you sad about now? I'm sorry, what? So I don't know. It's good to have people that say what they're feeling, because there are other people that feel that way too, and they want to. Once again, I'm talking about creating a character, a main character that people can associate with. And if it's trauma bonding, great. But keep it in context. Don't make it all about that. Like you were saying, Brony, like, don't see a therapist. Why drag me through this?
Exactly. That is the question I was, posing as part of why writers are narcissists. I could only imagine a narcissist that would, justify putting that on everybody else and projecting it outward instead of trying to deal with it internally. Cordero, what do you think of the question?
Well, as far as trauma dumping, self-insert, wish fulfillment, good authors do that too. They're just better at it.
Ooh, okay, okay. So finish
Yeah.
what you're saying and then explain that statement.
Yeah, well, good authors are better at that because I have a lot. My characters, both OC and what I take from existing characters, I put a lot of myself into them. I think every character I've ever made has a bit of me in there. I don't think any one character has ever been completely me. Like I've never tried to write just me into a story, but like there's a lot of characters that are 40, 50, 70% me, 10% me. Like and they have my desires, they have my hopes and fears. They have my traumatic experiences, maybe exaggerated for narrative purposes and such. But like the biggest technique to the biggest technique to not have that get way down, like was it Justin talking about his family or was that Silverquill talking about his family listening to the radio play and it just got so heavy for so long and you just had to turn it off?
Oh yeah, that was this guy was going crazy, go nuts.
Whether he was talking about his life or telling us a story, he didn't give the audience a break. So like even if you're writing a sad story about someone's traumatic experience, you have to give your audience a break. Like you have to have some kind of levity. Like it has to go back up, even if the overall feeling and tone of your story is sad and depressing. At some point you need to laugh. At some point you need to feel hope, like that. And because otherwise, if you just stay in that one vein of sadness, people will check out. Because but people don't want to deal with that for that long unless it's like their own mother or something, or a family member they deeply care about. You're not going to just dwell on the darkness forever. It's exhausting. So you, as a writer, you get those emotional low points and you emphasize them for the story beat, and then you back off. You take the tension away and you put some levity in there and come back to it later.
Yeah, creating a fully fleshed out character with all the range of emotion that you would find in an everyday person. A real person.
Cruizer, do you have any questions for these guys on this part before I go on to the next question?
Not so much a question, but making sure I understand. Don't put so much drama in, say, just one chapter. Kind of spread it out.
Yeah, that's a way to think about it.
Here's a great example, just borrowing universal culture. Suppose in the first scene of Star Wars, the original, when Darth Vader is interrogating Leia, and he steps up and tell us where you are, I'll blow up your planet, and then you'll be really sad and have to confide in Luke Skywalker, who's your long lost twin brother. And by the way, I'm your daddy. Who's your daddy? I am.
I can't. Spoilers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I just blow your minds. Imagine if they tried to lay all that out in the first scene.
Just exposition dump the whole movie.
Exposition dump the whole movie. And by the way, that gold droid over there, yeah, I made him, so he's technically your brother.
That's funny.
Just imagine trying to fit all that into just the first scene, the first chapter, the first lyric.
Yeah. Or imagine
your toaster oven is your third cousin.
There you go.
Or maybe closer to the vein of what we're talking about of being too heavy too long. Imagine if that opening scene was 10 minutes of Darth Vader slaughtering rebels, and instead of choking one guy, he choked like 7 people asking the same questions, and then he interrogated Leia and was just constantly yelling and threatening her the entire time, and it was like a 15-20 minute scene of that. You turn off the damn movie. You gotta.
I don't know. Depends on if I'm in a bad mood. So
true.
Violence is kind of nice.
Maybe, yeah.
Actually, it could be kind of funny if those 7 rebels he interrogated, they'll like hit the ceiling in different tones. Ding, 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 ding.
Just made a whole scale.
Made a whole scale of choking. That would be interesting.
I think we lost sight of the question here.
Yeah, I think we got the idea.
Don't put everything in all at once, giggity, and then you might
don't overload the audience with one emotion for too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were saying that the question sort of was loosely based around don't make one chapter about that. I would say just like take that one fully fleshed out character and have him move through every chapter and being confronted with all of the different things that happen in that chapter. So it doesn't have to like dump out all at once in one chapter. It's just the arc. It's the character arc. He doesn't change. She doesn't change. It's just an arc. They have to change. Every character has to change. As a writer, you have to know, everybody that's a writer knows this. There has to be a development of character, but it's not like at one time in a chapter that's like out of the whole 3-act Grecian play act thing, or 5 if you've read Save the Cat. But that character arc doesn't just exist in one chapter. It exists throughout the whole arc of that character and the whole arc of the spectrum of that story you're trying to convey.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I might actually put forth a challenge to that. There is talk of the flat character arc, where a character does not change, but then then you have to show how the world changes around them.
Yes, and you know what the prime example of that is? I'll let you guess.
Jesus Christ?
Okay, well,
no, I would definitely not say Jesus Christ for that.
I don't know. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are
I
dead.
would offer to the panel that it would be Peter Sellers in Being There. The Chauncey Gardner character. He was static. Life happened to him. He did not create things. He just was his own self. Talking about gardening, he was just the gardener, and all of a sudden, because he talked like he was just talking about weeding and gardening and making sure that the roots were firm and could, get the nutrients from the soil. But people took it as a metaphor, and so before you know it, he's up for presidency. Because the life just happened to him. He was a static character. And I loved that because it was the only time I could think of Jesus Christ, of course, notwithstanding, that ever happened to me personally, that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Go. Okay.
Your end of the lesson.
Okay.
There we go.
Very interesting, actually. I never considered that.
Yeah. It's a pretty niche technique. Most characters have arcs.
Yes.
But I'm trying to think of other, like, has anyone ever read Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead? I think those guys stayed the same throughout. Those guys didn't change much, did they? That's this kind of stuff happened to them.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, a little bit. They were, things happened to them. They were their characters were just constant insofar as they were questioning the universe around them.
Yeah.
And experiencing it from an observer's point of view.
Yeah, so that might be an example of that. But something has to change. So if you want your character to stay the same, you literally have to move the world around them, which seems harder to me. It seems easier to me. To me, it seems easier just to write characters changing over time.
So the last question that I have for you guys is, and I've mentioned it a couple of times earlier, is why should your audience care enough to read your story? So when you're talking about your, so I want to hear more about your stories here, and I want you to convince the rest of the audience to go click on your links in the description and read your stories and know everything that's staying up to date with it. So if you're really important enough that we should care about the art that you're making, what is it that you're putting out into the world that other people can take away from it and enrich their own lives in one way or another? Lee, what do you think?
Well, I don't really know how to answer that because I don't think about the world like that. I'm not putting this story out there into the world because I think it's the most important story that ever needs to be told. It's a story that maybe doesn't need to be told at all, but it's just kind of sweet enough, and my take on the world as a person is gentle enough with the world and brutal enough with the world that maybe it deserves to be. But every writer is going to be different with their answer to that.
So you're telling me that you don't think it's the most important thing and that anybody could ever read?
No, it's not.
So
But
guys,
damn good.
so people in the audience, I'm running into a bit of an issue here because I think I'm getting a sneaking suspicion that the premise of my title might be wrong, because that does not sound like an answer a narcissist would give.
Aha!
I can bring it back
don't
around.
get me wrong. Every writer thinks that their little darling, like there's a phrase, "killing your darlings." Whenever a writer writes a passage or a sentence, they're like, "Oh, that's the best thing I've ever written." Every writer thinks that they have the prettiest kid on the playground, and so it's hard. But I know objectively, I've met some amazing writers. And so, I can say that, I'm not as good as that, but I'm different than that. And I can only say that my book is interesting because it's my perspective of the world, and it's coming from the perspective of somebody who's legally blind, which is different, and somebody who is empathic, which is odd, but still a qualification for a writer, and somebody who completely bastardizes the language. And so I've analyzed, deconstructed, and reconstructed over 8,000 episodes of animation. So I know how to rip apart and put together a good story, and I know what a good story consists of, and I also know what a bad one is consisting of. So maybe mine is not the most important story, but I think it's really damn good. So there's a bit of a narcissist in me. Yeah, sure. Why not? I'm not going to say don't go buy my book unless it's like reverse psychology. Oh, you don't want this. This is my magical mystery cabinet of intrigue. Don't look in there. No.
I thought you called it your dark whimsy.
That's my room. Yeah, my dark whimsy.
The whimsy.
I need you guys to stop blowing the lid off of my strategies here. I'm going to run out of pieces to play. Cordero, what do you think about the question?
Well, now that Lee decided to be humble, I have to match it at least somewhat. So I'm not going to say that what I write it's like screw Tolkien, screw Shakespeare, read Cordero. This is what I present. But yeah, as far as what I write, I first and foremost write for myself. I write stories that I want to hear or that I want to have told and that I would want to read. So I start from there, and then I try to use good writing technique, which I've learned over the years from books and other writers and writing panels that professional writers have hosted, and try to use techniques to make other people care by using these well accepted ideas of how to draw a reader in. The biggest thing is the first chapter hook, or the first paragraph hook, to bring someone in and make them want to read your story. So you said to convince people to read, to think your story is the greatest thing in the world. If you'll indulge me, I'm willing to put myself out there and read you the first paragraph of my story, Loveless Love Child, which I posted a couple weeks ago. This is the first paragraph where I tried to set the atmosphere and make you want to continue reading.
Okay.
He opened his eyes for the first time through a viscous gel-distorted haze. He was soaked head to hoof in this green mucus as he peered out the open flaps of a translucent clamshell container. He tried to wipe the goo from his eyes to see more clearly. It had some effect, however the blurry haze persisted for some time. Despite the lack of clear sight, he was fully aware of his surroundings, although he lacked any concept of where he was. The walls were not walls, but more like an endless menagerie of twisted spires and corridors he could scarcely see down in the dim green lighting. There were orifices piercing the hallway spires, a violence that made no sense for either construction or biological growth. The many holes were accompanied by a constant buzzing hum, giving the impression of a pony-sized wasp nest.
Yeah, I've had a cold too.
That was very good, by the way. Excellent.
Thank you.
Good job. Very nice job.
Yes, applause.
It's very much so. I could recite for you the one little paragraph that started this whole thing.
Go for it.
Chesterfield couch. The setting is in Mr. Pencraft's very, very, very old bookshop. which appears here and there every once in a while, this time in the back boroughs of England at some timeless place. And he's a silhouette in a chair, Mr. Pencraft. He's in an Edwardian suit, he has a slight English accent, and there are children and older people and all different kinds of walks of life, and they all are there gathered around him. The door opens on its own at 1 minute to 4 and closes and shuts up, and then it looks like a dead thing. Everything that's alive is inside, but to the outside world, it's dead. So he begins reading the way he always begins reading. Firelight behind him, cup of tea next to him, and he says, "There are those who would say that every story has been told, and that there are no more truly great stories to tell. That our rivers of myths and fountains of fables have, sadly, reached the dry end of that well. But there is one story more, from a time long before your earliest once upon a times. One I wish I could say was the greatest tale of ancient days. But, in truth, it was just the last one. The very last one. Come to think of it, the very, very last one to survive."
That sounded so cool.
That sounds fun. Oh, here comes the soundboard.
As for mine, I'm not going to read a passage, but I'm going to explain a little bit about it, and that is the wonders of parenthood. You know, the older I get, the more I start to realize how nice it would be to have children. When I see my cousins with their kids, and I see those proud papa moments, and just how adorable and rewarding it must be. But what about, for say, like maybe an adopted child? What about one who has been through a lot of trauma, who has been through things more than any 15-year-old should? And how does a parent who just took this kid in, who never had kids before, raise it? They don't hate children. They always wanted one of their own, but they just figured because of their job, being part of royalty, they never had the time. But then they discover it was one of the best things they ever did.
It's a great premise.
Silver, what do you think about all this?
Well, let's see here. I'm kind of torn. I was going to talk about the art as therapy and why people look for stuff, but I could also quote Alan Moore on you should just read stories, even the bad ones. While worshiping snake gods, I think he said that you should read bad stories, because if you think I could write better than this crap, you will. That's at least a motivator. Bad fiction can be a motivator to counterbalance with good fiction.
Okay, so he's been on fan fiction websites, it sounds like.
Most likely. Or, probably read a lot of DC fan fiction. But instead, I will quote Terry Pratchett. Sir Terry Pratchett.
Oh, very good.
Because
predecessor.
I just love this quote from him. Without a shadow of a doubt, the first fiction ever recounted was fantasy. Guys sitting around the campfire telling each other stories about gods who made lightning and stuff like that. They did not tell one another literary stories. They did not complain about the difficulties of male menopause while being a junior lecturer at some Midwestern college campus. Fantasy is without a shadow of the doubt Ur literature, the spring from which all other literature has flown. And then to go on, he also then lists some of the greats. The Epic of Gilgamesh is one of the earliest works of literature, and by the standards we would apply now, a big muscular guy with swords and certain godlike connections, that's fantasy. The national literature of Finland, the Kalevala, Beowulf in England. I cannot produce the Bhagavad Gita, but the Indian one, you know what I mean. The national literature, the one that underpins everything else, is, by the standards that we apply to now, a work of fantasy. The literature. So why why make more fantasy? Why write fiction? Because you are tapping into a historical tapestry. Even if you're just one little strand being woven through, you help make the structure stronger, sound, and more vibrant.
Okay.
Terry Pratchett, gotta love it. Yeah, following in the footsteps and the proud lineage of other orators and writers before. It's important. I think the Bhagavad Gita thing might be stepping on some toes because there's a philosophical thing that borders on religion. But anyway, I love that very much. I love Terry Pratchett too, but you know, I couldn't make it all the way through Discworld though, unfortunately. But Neil Gaiman, no, that's my guy.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I too do not mean to disrespect anyone's beliefs or step on toes, but one of the funny things. Who here is a Babylon 5 fan?
I have.
Good Lord.
I've heard of it.
I could hear the shrugging from those of you who don't have the cameras on.
Yeah.
The producers of Babylon 5 were atheists. But in one episode, the Long Night in the Garden, a fellow who is awaiting retribution for crimes he's committed and would gratefully accept them. He wanted to be punished. He wanted to atone for his wrongdoing. He said, I never understood the courage that Jesus showed that night waiting in the garden. And these are atheists saying this. They are praising the courage. Maybe they don't believe in the truth of it, but they do recognize the example in it. And that is a great power in fiction. Yes. That's part of why Babylon 5 was such an awesome show.
If I could add on to that, something that I've said in a lot of my videos, and a philosophy that I live by is I'll say things like strength is a choice. And if there's anybody in the audience that hasn't ever heard me say that before, it's, you know, in order to get the act of getting stronger can be boiled down to doing something that is difficult, but you've got to choose to do the difficult thing, or at least try to do the difficult thing. And in doing the difficult thing or trying to do the difficult thing, you might get a little bit hurt. You got to put a lot of effort into it. But then you recover from that, and then it becomes easier next time. And then you repeat the process of, you know, and eventually the difficult thing is easy. And then you take the next step to the next difficult thing. So all of that to say, strength is a choice. I had lived by a very similar sort of philosophy for most of my life. And the closest I could get, but it never quite felt right, was to quote Nietzsche and say, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. But then I was reading a FiMfiction by one Dungeon Miner, and I can't remember the title of the FiMfiction. It was and especially since it was part of a series. But at one point in time, Princess Cadence says, love is a choice, and then describes, describes the love you might feel for your spouse in a very similar way that I just described to getting stronger. And it just felt like it clicked with what I had been, the words that I had been looking for most of my life to describe the choices that I make and how I go about things. And I will admit, I don't know if in my shame or what, that I stole that dude's words and put them in all of my videos. And probably, and to add insult to injury, I would bet money that more people have heard me say strength is a choice and applied that to what they do than the people that have read his story.
Well, got him. Successfully stolen.
Yeah. So let's see here. With that, I think we can get into audience participation. What do you guys think? We ready?
Sounds good.
Does anybody have something else they want to say before we start, though?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, everyone steals. I basically took Sarah J. Maas's character Hunt Athalar and put a B on his name and called him Bathalar because he's a bat pony. I'm really clever. His name's Bathalar, and he's a bat.
I mean, congratulations. You've graduated to M.A. Larson.
Well, what's that old saying?
That's a compliment.
Lazy artists copy ideas, professional artists steal them.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
I was gonna say that because Mega Buster Shepherd had put that in the chat earlier, and I was gonna bring that up. But were you gonna say something, Silver?
Yes, indeed. I don't know if we could show this to the audience, but I put in the chat a link to a Pearls Before Swine comic that really, I think, gets at the heart of the writing process.
I'll do what I do. I will link it in the chat and link it in the description for those who are watching after the fact. No, shoot. Now I owe you a quarter. Yeah, I owe you a quarter now. I'm sorry.
That's right.
All right, so let's see here. I still need to get you back for that time you grabbed the bill at what was it, Cheesecake Factory. Sneaky freaking Griffin. All right.
I'm just cheesing things up.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
get him back by buying me Cheesecake Factory. That'll show him.
Yeah. There you go. Pay it forward. The other thing, we were talking about stories before the stream started, and the question came up: when was the last time George R.R. Martin came up with the Song of Ice and Fire books? So I've had that on Google this entire time. It has been more than a decade since A Dance with Dragons came out in 2011.
Yeah, I knew it. I know he doesn't write anymore. He just complains about conservatives on Twitter.
Have you seen the clip of Stephen King inadvertently dunking on him, where like George R.R. Martin is sort of interviewing Stephen King, and George R.R. Martin is like fanboying a little bit, like, how do you write so much? And Stephen King is just casually like, yeah, I write like 6 pages a day and try to stick to that. And he just sort of casually lays out his routine, and without saying it, basically says, get on my level. Or at least that's what I got out of it. I think Stephen King was trying to be more polite.
Alrighty then, I can dig it. I'm sorry I don't have anything intelligent to add to that. But anyway,
it's a funny interview.
Harriman says there's a difference between quote original and obviously derivative. Compare Bleach and Buso Rein-Kun. I don't know the second one. I've seen Bleach though. Then compare Bleach with Incarnate. I don't know what Incarnate is either. Buso Rein-Kun takes inspiration. Incarnate blatantly copies. So does anybody know what Harriman is talking about here between these three stories? Bleach,
Those words didn't connect. Say it again.
Bleach, Buso Rein-Kun, and Incarnate. So
those animes.
Yeah, Buso Rein-Kun takes inspiration, I'm guessing, from Bleach. Incarnate blatantly copies, I'm guessing again, Bleach, if I'm understanding Harriman's words properly.
Okay.
So does anybody know anything about that? Because I've seen Bleach, but I haven't seen those other two things.
Me too. I've seen Bleach, but I haven't seen the other two, so I don't know if one is inspired by and one's a ripoff or not.
Well, let's see here. Buso Rein-Kun, I've seen the characters. I've always found them a bit odd. Like a heroine has multiple blades affixed to every limb in the most chaotic mechanical arm sort of way. Let's see here. Okay. The narrative of Buso Rein-Kun follows Katsuki Muto, who saves Tokiko Tsurama and is killed by an alchemic monster known as a homunculus. Feeling responsible, he is revived by replacing his destroyed heart with a kakagune. Oh boy, I'm terrible at pronunciation. Kakagune. Basically, yes, I can see some similarities to Bleach in the structure. You have, well, honestly, you could tie this into the hero's journey. The redemptive feminine figure intrudes upon the everyday life and acts as sort of a spirit guide or animal to this world, but it requires the death of the old life.
Rukia.
Exactly right. Rukia pops up, or in this story, a Tokiko Sumura. Apologies. Yeah. So
yeah, I agree that the structure and premise of Bleach is pretty generic enough that yeah, saying you ripped off Bleach is kind of like saying you ripped off the hero's journey. It's just sort of part of the craft. Like it's gonna happen. Now if the main character was named like Kukia, and Aichi Guy, and they like, and the the character models looked really so. Then yeah, I could see calling it a ripoff, but just being like, oh, it's a similar fantasy magic dealing with death in the afterlife and journeying to become more powerful. Like you could write a lot of stories.
It reminds me of a joke that Team 4-Star made a long time ago where it was Vegeta and Nappa talking. And Nappa goes, Vegeta, what do you think about Bleach? It's like us with swords. And Vegeta goes, I liked Bleach better when it was called Yu Yu Hakusho. And I liked Yu Yu Hakusho better when it was called Dragon Ball Z.
Are you saying all anime is the same?
A lot of it certainly is. Lee, what were you saying a second ago?
It's impossible to get away from writing a story without drawing impetus from the hero's quest and the hero's journey, because it is the backbone and basis of everything. Like if you look up a video called Finding Joe, and it's about Joseph Campbell, and he was a kind of a cross-cultural philosopher, writer, person, just a massive brain, and he was the first person that really talked about the hero's quest and the hero's journey. And every story that's ever been written, unless it's particulate to a philosophy or a culture or a textbook, it's plain. It all is derived from the hero's quest, the hero's journey, especially when like Harry Potter and Star Wars, same. Most anime, all same, because it comes from redemption and overcoming obstacles and things like that. It's all part of the hero's journey. Look it up, Finding Joe. It's great.
All right.
It's a staple that every writer has to understand in order to be a good writer.
Okay.
So I had mentioned this a minute ago, but yeah, Megabuster Shepherd said, to quote Ecclesiastes, if I'm pronouncing that right, I feel like I'm missing a syllable. Ecclesiastes. Okay. There is nothing new under the sun. And to quote the best-selling writer, Grandmaster of Science Fiction, John C. Wright, good writers are inspired, great writers steal. What do we think about that quote, about that second quote?
Someone brought that up.
I think the original, the quote I heard was that genius steals. That's how it ends. I can't remember how it begins, but it was genius steals. Something borrows, some character trait borrows, and genius steals. I can't remember. I don't know where I got that from.
There you go. I'm gonna write Naruto in space and call it Warhammer 80K.
Well, actually, I think it's lazy. Lazy is copying. Like let's say you can faithfully recreate someone else's art drawing. Well, that's great, but you're not putting any of yourself out there. You're just replicating someone else's work. That's lazy, even if it requires skill. But if you understand what the piece did so well, why it worked great, then
and make it your own.
You can make it your own. That's stealing, but it's stealing and putting a bit of yourself in there, which is why I am rather bitterly against AI-generated art, AI-generated stories, unless they're like so bad they're funny. But by and large, AI is becoming increasingly worrisome.
Indeed.
Let's see here. I'm not sure. So I looked it up. Elliot, I'm just kind of looking at the paraphrase on Google here. I don't know who Elliot is, and I'm not giving the last name. Who phrased it as immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. And he apparently stole that from Oscar Wilde, who gave us the line, talent borrows, genius steals. So that's according to Google.
Oscar Wilde by the way, Oscar Wilde has one of my favorite death quotes. The last thing he said before he died was, either me or this wallpaper had it.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry. Either me or what?
Either me or this wallpaper has to go. And then he died. Come on.
Come on.
What an exit.
Oh man.
I'm not sure I agree with that, because even if anything, I would flip it, because it takes sometimes it can take a genius to put a unique spin on something, or at the very least change the perspective in enough of a way that it becomes its own thing. So, but I can definitely see where this Elliot guy had said that the immature poet imitates. That I can definitely see, because because then there's like you guys said, there's nothing going in. It's just monkey see, monkey do. Well, the monkey see and the monkey might see and the monkey might do, but does the monkey understand? And that's the big question. And
I think it's kind of a moot point, really, to be honest, because, unless you're putting something of yourself into whatever you're doing and make it part. And this is the question we were talking about before. Is it, and I posed the question back to you, Brony, is it possible to actually be a writer and not inject some of yourself in, unless you're writing a textbook or something that has to do with a lineage of, say, a philosophy or a religion.
And that's
but is it possible to even be a writer and not put something of yourself in, which brings us back to the whole thing, circling the wagons, that why writers are narcissists. I would pose the question, is it possible to be a writer and not look at it from your own perspective? And by that definition, you are a narcissist, because you only have your own reflection to look at when you're looking at the world through your own lens.
Unless you can be, and here's my actual thoughts. I'm not going to try to be a trolling heel anymore. Here's my actual thoughts, is that at the end of the day, you are only capable of writing a human. Now, if you're an empathetic enough human or smart enough human, and you've taken in enough experiences to have the full spectrum and can understand a perspective outside of yours, you might be able to put your characters in situations that are unfamiliar to you. But how you realistically, okay, hang on a second. Let me make sure I got my wording right here.
Checks notes.
Yeah. So it'll come down to how realistic is your portrayal of something that is supposed to be outside of you. But even then, everyone in this call and every person in the audience and everyone out there, they experience anger, sadness, happiness, laughter, the whole thing. So it just becomes a reflection of the human experience, which in itself, in its bare bones concept, is universal. So when you're writing, say, like a Klingon, or something that's or a Sangeli from well, I said Klingon and Sangeli specifically because they're warlike, and it becomes Planet of the Hats, if you all know what that trope means. It basically, you've got the civilization and its entire planet that only does one thing.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And like the Vulcans are only logical.
They're all logical. The Romulans are all conniving. The Klingons are all warriors.
Yes, exactly.
The Cardassians are all like secret ops.
Yeah. So but that's.
The Ferengi are all. Oh wait, never mind. I have to go.
Right.
I can't finish that thought.
Calm down there.
All about the holodeck, my friend.
Calm down there, Kanye West. Anyway, the point is that a society like that wouldn't be able to function. A person that's like that wouldn't be able to function. They'd be an animal. They'd be, and even animals are capable of a wide range of emotions and experiences. So it's just not realistic. And if you try to portray that, if you try to take a perspective outside of yours and you portray it with no level of empathy, then yes, you are demonstrating narcissistic behavior, and you're going to turn whatever character you're trying to make into a caricature at the very least.
Yeah. If there's not,
absolutely.
Because the thing with writers being narcissists is that, not, as Lee said, not only can you only write from your own perspective, and you were getting at that too, Brony, you could only write from your own perspective. But what also makes you a narcissist is you deign, or you purport to be able to write multiple perspectives,
or that your perspective,
or that your perspective is so vast that it can encompass the entire world,
or that yours is the only correct way, right? It could be any one of those three. So here's what I would ultimately say to the topic at hand here. Writers are not necessarily narcissistic, but bad writers are.
Okay, I can agree with that.
So
I can back that up. I can get behind that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at James Cameron's latest Avatar movie, I'd say so. I mean,
well, I don't know anything about that. I didn't bother with the first one.
I have a random side question that's kind of related to this for Lee as a fellow writer. Do you ever sweat over writing female characters and the female perspective? Because there is a stereotype or a stigma that male writers are bad at the female perspective, because there's apparently, according to women that I know who are avid readers, there's a lot of male hacks out there that write, you know, overly emotional stereotypes of women and constantly describe them as, you know, thick hips ready for childbearing. The male gaze is constantly interfering with the writing. Do you ever worry about if you're writing women accurately? Because I worry about that all the time, like not being a woman, like who am I to write this perspective?
Well, no, I don't have a problem with that at all. I was raised,
good, teach me your ways.
Some of the most important people in my life that have shaped who I am as a human being have been women. My grandma.
Me too, yeah.
And some of them for what they didn't do, and some for what they did do at that time. I mean, some for how they, you know, led their own lives. But, you know, just the fact that you're a human being doesn't matter gender at all. They're women or men, or women are women, and men are men, and men are women. We're all the same. It's just the plumbing's different, but that's it.
So when here's
and
what
the whole idea that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Okay, well, I get that. We have different emotional responses based on cultural, you know, things that have been implemented and put into our brains. But for the most part, as long as you know how to write from a human perspective, it doesn't matter whether they got boobies or not.
Yeah, a lot of the same things that make a strong man will make a strong woman, and a lot of characteristics that are respectable across cultures are respectable in both men and women. We're talking about work ethic. We're talking about you know, bravery and doing what you need to do to be a responsible, contributing member of society. The differences between men and women might come down. You're going to get differences. There are going to be differences in like some aspects of culture and the roles that they might play, the expectations they might have themselves. I do believe like biological psychology is a thing to a certain extent, but of course there are exceptions, and ultimately when you get down to it, everybody's their own individual, and someone like my girlfriend, for example, and she does things most of the time that are pretty typical of you might say it's typical of a woman, but there's also plenty of things that you might look and say, okay, that's less typical. You're less likely to know a woman that does this thing, right? And I couldn't even give you a specific example off the top of my head, but
and there's basically no women on the planet who do only things that are typical of women.
Yeah,
and the same is true for men. And yeah.
So when you write a woman, you are writing one woman, and even if you take like Friendship is Magic into consideration, there, even just in the main characters, you've got 6 to 8 different types of women, but they're still feminine in their way, and it's really hard to put an actual definition on it, but it's there when you know it when it's there.
This is where self-insert actually is an asset, because when I'm like, you know, hemming and hawing, oh, am I writing the female perspective correctly? I'm just like, how would I feel with this person's circumstances and with what they've been exposed to? How would I react? What would I think?
Yeah.
Basically, and that guides me really well to give characters, you know, whether they're women or not, realistic human or pony or whatever reactions to things.
I think the only time you'd really have to worry about the female perspective from this kind of thing is if you're writing a conflict that pertains to biology in some way.
Maybe, but that could be researched. Like,
and that could,
I
you could just talk to the women around you.
It's true. Exactly.
Or you could base the character off of women that you know and just call them up occasionally and go, what would you do in this situation?
What's funny is that as insecure,
I couldn't write at all about the childbirthing experience, but I do know women who have written about it. But that's all hearsay to me. But so yes, biological differences, granted, for sure. But you know, other than that, I think it's just basically human, unless it's cultural, particular to the time. Circa
has a lot to
1920s is a woman in circa 1920s is different than circa 1950s, different than Middle Ages, just like men are. Same. It just knowing the cultural, knowing where you're at in that place and time, in that universe, and then having those same conflicts, reacting. These characters, whether they be male or female, reacting to their environs, and that's it.
Yeah. What's funny is, as insecure as I sound, I actually think that one of my strengths as a writer is that I can write women really well. But the reason I flip out about it so much is because of the stigma that exists for male writers. Just knowing that I'm a male writer, someone will be. I don't know.
It's not the same as BIPOC, you know. I mean, it's not the same. I don't think. I mean, I believe this: guilt lives in a guilty mind. If you're a chauvinist, it'll come out on the page.
True, I believe that too.
So let's move on real quick here because we got a few minutes left. Jens Jorgensen wants to know, Silver, who would win, your Luna fangirling or my Celestia fangirling?
Well, let's see here. I believe this is the unstoppable force meets the immovable object, and therefore they surrender. So I think it just cancel each other out.
I think that's a fair bet. I mean, I'd still want to see the sparks fly. We'll have to make that video sometime.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Read my fanfiction, Crescent Moon. It basically answers that question.
Alrighty then.
Freshly posted today.
Yeah, some good self-promotion here. Sniper Nighter says, why are writers narcissists? That's simple. They create characters and personalities and often write or create these characters that get praised, for which can seem like praise that's aimed towards them. So they're going to write these characters, and these characters are going to do what they believe is right, and then the whole world is going to love them for it. And I think that comes back to like the wish fulfillment that we were talking about earlier, and the lack of empathy that we were talking about earlier. Are you guys roughly on the same page as me here?
Yeah, that's so.
I guess it depends. I mean, sometimes you make characters that you love to hate.
Yeah,
indeed. Now,
you're talking about self-insert again, because I've come to the enlightened opinion, because I used to make fun of fanfiction writers for their self-insert OCs, but now I just realized that it's just a matter of skill. Self-insert is just how you do.
Yeah.
But are you good at making your self-inserts compelling?
Right.
And the people who are bad at that, it's just really obvious that, oh, this is just your wish fulfillment on the page. But if you can obfuscate that in the good story, then it doesn't come across that way. But it's still the writer's wish fulfillment.
Mm-hmm. And I've been, talking trash and trolling all night. Like, I'm not guilty of this very thing myself. I mean, a buck to the face is my, for those who don't know, my reaction sort of series on this channel. But the season 7 of it has been following sort of a character arc that I went through at this point years ago, and how I got there. And that's, that right there is a self insert, and obviously but I don't know, it's sort of trying to, and I got to talk about myself as a character in the past tense with this, but Brawny just doesn't know what to do with himself and makes a lot of like openly bad decisions. If that makes any sense. So I don't know if that makes me if that, you know, takes away points from the Brawny as a Mary Sue category, or if I'm being a narcissistic self-insert. I don't know. That's really for the audience to decide. Moving on here. Paladin Pony T says, got a question for everyone. Does reading many different stories and seeing the world through different characters help you when writing? So I would say, yeah, it can definitely help you build your empathy. But what do you guys think?
I can't imagine being a writer without being a reader. Can't.
Yeah,
You have to see the world from other people's perspectives. I don't. It seems like a pretty self-answering question. You know, if you want to see the world from multiple perspectives in order to create a character that's believable, you have to see it from other people's perspectives, and that is by being a reader of other people's writing.
Every time I read and really enjoy another novel like Crescent City that I just read, I literally get better at writing, because I always think about, okay, I have these cool story ideas in my head that I like, but how do you present it? Like, the mechanical process of writing it out and presenting it in a novel format is a very specific skill. And every time I read a new novel, I take something away from how that author does it, how they structure scenes, how they do their paragraphs, and how they put the information forward. And I take a little bit of that away and I incorporate it into myself. That being said, in my opinion, I am woefully underread for somebody who wants to be a writer. I had the misfortune, and this is all my fault. I blame school, but you know, you're ultimately responsible for your own actions. But I kind of blame school for making reading seem like a chore, seem like something that's not fun. So I have this tendency in my brain of, oh, I should read more. Oh, but reading's boring. But then every time I actually take a book and indulge it, I love it. It's the greatest experience of my life, and it's better than any video game and movie. Novels are literally superior to video games and movies. When you get into a good book, it's just so much richer when you're in that world. But I have this block on reading that'll cause me to go long stretches of time of not reading any books, and I'm working on fixing that. And I'm jumping into making sure that I'm always reading at least one book at a time, and just jumping into fiction, because not only is it enriching my story experience in my life, but it actually makes me better every time I read something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will Eisen says, I can't remember exactly what Silver Quill said that he was reacting to, but he said, Silver Quill, are you saying that My Immortal is the best motivation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it can be. I mean, you've just read that, and you have beheld a crap. Absolute, a new level. It is almost transcendent in its awfulness.
Are you talking about the Evanescence song?
No, the fan fiction.
Oh.
And so I like Evanescence. So
Seen them.
Yeah, you can if reading My Immortal says, you know what, I can write a way better story than that, and you actually follow through on that post, well, there you go. It is inspiration.
Yeah.
My Immortal, if I remember correctly, was a Twilight fan fiction, wasn't it?
Yes. Wait, was it? No, it's Harry Potter. It's a Harry Potter fan fiction. She's in love with, she dates not Snape, Malfoy.
Ah.
I mean, I've never read it. What's My Immortal?
What horror? Didn't you run a panel breaking down My Immortal at one point in time?
I'm sure I brought it up in fan fiction panels because as unconfident as I am as a regular fiction writer, I've actually been arrogant enough to host fan fiction panels on how to write fan fiction, and I'm sure My Immortal came up in those.
Alrighty then. So last one we got for tonight. Doug's Film and TV says, "What are your favorite MLP fanfics?" Lee.
Mine.
I would have to say Silver Quill.
Say just here.
He's the only one I know, the only one I've talked to.
I'll help you out, Lee. Say My Little Dashie.
No, I would say I don't really have. I mean, I could say Cordero because I've never really talked to another fanfic writer, so I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure that it's not Fallout Equestria? Are you absolutely sure it's not Fallout Equestria or My Little Dashie?
My Little Dashie is not good.
He doesn't know that.
So overrated.
He doesn't know that. I'm trying to lure him into a trap.
No, it's I can't answer that because I'm not involved in that particular genre of writing. I don't, so I'm
Yeah.
I'm unqualified.
It's an unfair
mean,
question.
It is an unfair question for me, but I would like to.
I know, and
I would
I'm
like
so
to read some.
okay.
So,
Let
but
me recommend you one, and then I'll sort of answer the question as well.
If you don't say mine, I'm leaving the call.
So just for that, under no circumstances read Cordero's. It's one of the it makes my little Dashie look good. So here's what's up. There's okay, so for a short read, there's one called Sunny Skies All Day Long. It's about Celestia trying to disguise herself as a normal pony and live a normal life for one day. And then on the longer side of reads, there's a humanized, so like it takes all the characters, but now they're like human shapes. And it's a
shapes.
Yeah, right. So it's a humanized story. So they're not ponies, they're
Globs of
humans. And it's
humans.
not Equestria Girls. This predates Equestria Girls, but it's a humanized story by Gentleman J called The Journey of Graves. And it is a romantic action OC hooks up with Rarity slow burn. And I greatly enjoyed it, and I know I'm not doing it justice with my descriptions, but those are my two recommendations. Cruizer, do you have a favorite?
No, because I don't really read any, but I will say, Lee, do stay away from cupcakes.
Also not good. It's also not good.
Okay.
Vulpecula says Past Sins by Penstroke, which I've heard is good, and I actually have a hardback copy of it. I haven't gotten around to reading it.
I have heard of. I should read some of his stuff. I've heard of Penstroke, and I don't read a lot of fan fiction, so that's surprising that I know.
He wrote a really good one about like you know what, I can't describe it because I'll give it away, but it was a really good one about Zecora. By Penstroke, yeah, and yeah, I can't say much more without giving it away because I thought the twist was really cool at the end. Silver Quill, what's your favorite?
Let's see here. My favorite would be titled Earth and Sky by one Warren Hutch. It's a very innovative look at how the main six futures would unfold. This was, I think, started in 2012 before Twilight even earned her wings. So it's a very interesting alternate take on how Twilight, Rarity, and of all ponies, Pipsqueak, start a business to create artificial wings to help ponies fly. Now, sadly, Warren Hutch is no longer with us. Passed away in, oh gosh, I'm not even sure when he passed away. 2020.
Oh wow.
So, but it's a very fun, and it's believable, but it also is willing to take some risks with the world.
Okay. Let's see here. Who did I not ask?
That's everybody.
Okay. All right. So closing thoughts, and guys, promote your stories one more time. Cordero, one thing you learned, and promote your story.
Oh gosh, what did I learn? I learned a lot. I learned a lot from Lee tonight. Just getting to like spitball with another writer is really cool, you know. And I know eventually I'll get over my fear of submitting something to an editor or publisher, and I'll actually write something original, because I'm not lacking in original ideas. I'm just lacking in confidence, and I'm always feeling like, no, I need to be a little bit better. I need to be a little bit better before I submit anything. So, you know, I guess I just learned that I'm gonna have to get over that at some point, and just try something.
All right, and what are your stories again? I mean, we've got a link to your FiMfiction in the description,
Yes.
but tell us your stories real quick one more time.
Yes. Crescent Moon. Luna's head general becomes Celestia's assassin and protector of Celestia's new personal student. This right after Luna's rebellion 1,000 years ago. Loveless love child, Chrysalis and Shining Armor's illegitimate child gets kicked out of the hive and has to figure out how to survive on his own. The Trial of Princess Celestia. 500 years ago, in the middle of Celestia's reign, she's put on trial and accused of crimes against Celestia and has to defend herself, loosely based on the trial of Charles I of England. I based a lot of the legal stuff on that. And the other active story I'm writing is the first Equestria Girl, which is the story of Sunset Shimmer and how she came to be and I'm planning to go all the way up to the first movie and probably beyond. But it'll take me a couple years, school years, to get to that point, because according to the movies, she was in school at least 2 years before Twilight Sparkle arrived. So I have a lot of story to get Sunset Shimmer to where she is in the first movie.
Lee, tell us one thing you learned tonight and promote your stories for us.
Well, I just love the whole idea of the open forum and discussion of expression. I enjoyed the first panel that you let me be on about art. I enjoyed this one. It was really interesting talking to Cordero too, and thank you for your kind words. Because I've never experienced that genre of writing. To be a fan of something, to take on the responsibility of continuing in that lineage. It's a big responsibility. I don't dissuade you from doing anything else. You don't have to do original. If you love what you're doing, then keep doing it. I don't know how to write anything other than what my brain spits out. So, but I really did enjoy this. This was good, and it is very rare is the occasion. Cordero, you're right. It's very rare is the opportunity for a writer to talk to another writer. We just, because we're very misanthropic, and we're, my idea of an outing is like the Diogenes Club from Sherlock Holmes, Mycroft Holmes. He goes and sits in the Diogenes Club, and he wants to be around people, but he just don't want to talk to people.
Sit quietly.
And that's about it. But I want to thank you, Brawny, and everybody that's been on the panel for allowing me. This is the second time back, and I'd be on. If you have anything to do with anything artistic or anything, have me on, and I'll just be the guy that just, makes everybody angry in the background.
Hey, that's my job.
It's been great having you on, Lee. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, and I just to promote it, I mean, please, if there are new people that don't know about my work, it's called The Grim Possession of Chesterfield Couch. That's GRYM, and I think the link, Brawny, you said that you had the link for my YouTube channel, or from my YouTube channel where I have the vlogs.
I've got your grim position link and your YouTube link in the description.
In the YouTube link, you'll see like Tabitha St. Germain is there. There's a lot of people that you'll know that are in My Little Pony that are in because they're all friends of mine, and so I just grabbed them all together and phoned them up. I cold called them and said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. You want to do this thing?" And they all said, "Sure." And for those people that weren't sure, I said, "Oh, it's too bad because so-and-so's doing it." And they go, "Oh, yes, I'm totally in. Yes."
Oh man, that's dirty and underhanded, and I love it.
That's awesome.
But
I'm on the Facebook
link. For giving me the opportunity to talk about it. It is a passion project for me, and it's been 13 years. And though I undersell it, it is my magnum opus, and it is the best thing I've done to date. Anyway,
Cordero,
is the story itself on the Facebook or on YouTube? Like, how do I get to the story?
Well, on the YouTube, I do the Grim Vlogs, VLOGS. So
is that what it is? The stories and vlogs.
It's leading up to the table read, which takes place at Dick and Roger Studios here in Vancouver. Okay. And you'll see all of the characters in there. It's basically talking about the creative process that leads up to it. So, but now comes the work, because I'm almost finished the novel in its final form, and now I'm going to be going to talk to somebody at Transatlantic in Toronto and see if they can represent me as an agent, and then Bloomsbury Press and in the UK and Random House in the States. So I'm going to need numbers for people that are going to, help this, and so I kind of have to whore it out a little bit, and I hate doing that, but it's a requirement and a necessary evil. So if you haven't seen it, go to my Facebook page, please sign up as a member, leave happy comments and share it and like it, and you'll see the progress of this dream that I've had alive for 13 years.
All right, Cruiser, some closing thoughts and one thing you learned.
the advice they gave about how to make sure your character is not a blank slate, that will come in handy. I mean that sincerely, because the goal was to have him kind of start out as one, but over time you start to see his personality.
No, that's the mistake I made that I
Yeah.
told you guys about.
Yeah. Give him opinions, likes, and dislikes right off the bat.
Yeah.
All
Really?
right.
Okay.
Yeah. Silver Quill, one thing you learned and some closing thoughts.
Well, I learned about some more reading suggestions. I especially appreciate Lee let us know about One Day in the Life of Ian.
It's a day in the life of Ivan Denisovich by Solzhenitsyn. It's a mumbly word.
I appreciate because I could not pronounce that. And also Finding Joe. I'm curious to see a video like that.
That's a
movie.
great view. That's a great view.
There we go. But a closing thought is, and this is one encouragement I didn't get to give to Cruizer when I was joking about, slap the letters, now slap another one. Sometimes you just gotta do. What do they say? You spend 1 year writing a book and 5 years editing it.
Sounds about right.
So the big thing is not to get so hung up on asking all these questions that you never do the writing. Just have the confidence in yourself to start, and things will start to fall into place and grow as you do.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, Justin, I would say just start writing. Just start writing, and if you're not sure what a novel format looks like, just read or reread a story you like and just do what they do. Just
Well,
be like, how do I tell the story? How do I format it? And just basically just copy another novelist. And,
Well, Cordero, you've read it.
Try it. Yes, I actually have your document up, or I had your document up a minute ago. Your document is basically a big list of scene fragments and story ideas. You have like 20 pages or something of all this stuff. You have so much content on there. What you're gonna want to do is now you have all of these ideas out. Go back to the very beginning or open a new document and start writing from chapter 1. Like start writing it out in novel format.
That's actually what I've been doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a friend of mine at work who is a huge book nerd. He's always got a book in his hands. He always brings a book to work. He reads a lot. And he was the person I went to, like, look, can you help me with this? And he told me what to do. And he says it feels much more fitting now. There's some things that need to be changed around, but it feels...
Same doc? Is it the same doc, the one that's 27 pages? Where does your chapter 1 start? Is it the very beginning?
Yeah, like everything that's highlighted in yellow is what was added. Is
the novel format that you're going for.
Alrighty.
Yeah, good. That's how you get better, is you just write. Like all of the information and writing panels in the world, from personal experience, all of the information and writing panels in the world doesn't make you a better writer. The only thing that makes you better is writing.
Yeah, and don't be afraid of criticism, and don't be afraid of revisions. Being able to take criticism will help you immensely in improving. All right, guys, I'm gonna call it there because we're running pretty late here.
Well, thanks, Brony, and thank you everybody else on the panel too. It was nice to meet all of you, and of course, Mr. Sprower.
Yep.
You actually pronounced my last name right. I'm surprised.
Alrighty then. So everybody listening, have a wonderful new year. We're going crazy in 2023. I'm gonna try to get on this full time so I don't have such an abysmal upload schedule. Go buy Lee Tokkar's book. Go read Pony Cordero's
It's not out yet, but go to my pages.
Yeah, go to his page and follow him so that you can pre-order it as soon as it's available.
I definitely want to read it. I want to read the novel version.
Don't watch any of Silver Quill's videos. He's got absolutely nothing good to say.
never join his streams.
Yeah.
Never, ever.
Are you streaming tomorrow, Silver?
Yes, I will.
Well, because I got this out of the way, I'll come tune in.
Yeah.
All right. I can't wait, dude.
Yeah. What are you gonna have Brawny on?
Well, when schedules permit, right?
Hey, I suppose so. You've canceled your stream enough times to come on my show. I got to return the favor at some point. You just let me know when, man. And go subscribe to Concert Cruiser so you can see all. He just came out with a video a couple of days ago. It was really funny. It was a Christmas video. I hope you all have a wonderful New Year. We're going for it this year, all of us. Not like it's going to be good. It's going to be good, and I'm going to be here for it, and all these guys are going to be here for it. I'm very grateful to all of my generous supporters on Patreon, especially the $10 and up tier. These guys are Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministry, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden, MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto, Acrylic, VA, Mr. Sonic 31, Richard Hedgehog, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. I almost got through that on one breath.
Did you make a Peru?
And yeah, come join the Patreon so we can do this. We can do this full time. You can get on the show with Lee Tockar and Cruizer and Silver Quill and all the fun stuff. And yeah, we would love to have you. And like I said, we gotta get all 11,000 of my subscribers giving me $1 a month. Alrighty then. So that's about it. Once again, have a good night. Stay safe. God bless. Say good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you guys next year.
Good night, everybody.
Right.